Yeah, right off of here.
Right at the...
So these guys served on the Guitarra when my dad was in.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And I met this guy when I was a kid.
Check. What's your name and my phone number is...
My name is Jehiel William Cass. Growing up, my nickname was Hiley because both were my grandpa's names. But when I came down here to San Diego, went to the Guitarra, I just brought my duffel bag and dropped down the hatch, and some dude brushed against me in the hall and said, "What's your name, new kid?" And I just popped out J. Short and sweet. I never had to explain that I'm not Hebrew, but it's a Hebrew biblical name. Anyways, that's my name. And so I was in the Navy from late 1976 through August of 1983. I was a fire controlman, FTG they call it, fire controlman guns. Matter of fact, when I went to, what is it called? Did my ASVAB in Denver. Yeah, did all those tests. I wanted to be a nuke. And so I took all the tests and everything was good. But they said your math is just not good enough to be in the nuclear power program. I said, okay, fine then. He says, what else you got? I said, well, you can be anything else you want to be in the whole Navy, but you can't be a nuke. I said, okay, fine, whatever. Give me what you not. So they gave me a fire controlman. At the time, I was all excited because I was thinking, putting out fires, what kid doesn't want to be a fireman, right?
Right.
Well, it's really starting fires because fire controlman is the people that operate the equipment that control where the missiles and torpedoes go.
Kill commies for Christ, huh?
Yeah. So, anyways, after boot camp in Orlando, I went up to Great Lakes and was going to FTG school, right? To be like a Aegis destroyer guy or something like that. But I just remember, because you were there, the quad, you'd have to walk around, march around the quad between lunch and breakfast and quarters and all that. Well, by our classroom, there was this little bitty room about the size of this table, not too much bigger than that, with one of those half doors, you know, the top opens, the bottom, and there was a sign in that says join submarines. And I remember walking around that, looking at that sign for probably, I don't know, must have been a month or 2 months. Finally, I got up the nerve to go ask the guy and says, whoa, what about subs? How do you do that? Oh, you just say you want to be on subs and say, okay. So I did. And that got me out of Great Lakes over to New England, which I loved. New England. Have never been there. I love New England. So I went to sub school in New England, then went to Fire Control A school, which is your basic technical school in New London. And then I got sent over. Well, the boat was stationed out of New London. It was a boomer. The crews were out of New London, but the boat was physically out of Holyloch in Scotland. So they flew us over to Holyloch, and that was a wonderful time. First time over in England, you know, left-hand side of the road and all that good stuff. But got qualified on the USS Casimir Pulaski, the Crazy Polar, 633 Blue crew. I was kind of disappointed in that, you know, it's a big thing getting your dolphins.
Oh, yeah.
And celebrating getting your dolphins. So I got qualified on that first patrol, and when it was a charter airplane that flew us back, the captain gave away all the awards and dolphins and everything right there on the flight back from England. So I missed, you know, all the punches and the, you know, drink your dolphins kind of thing. But from there I went to, and the Mark 113, as I said earlier, fire control system was a mechanical analog system, like a very advanced, but probably one of the last analog computers. So it had synchros and servos and took all these inputs of ship's course and speed and sonar input and this to come up with some firing solution for torpedo. But then they sent me to the Mark 117 Fire Control System School, which was the digital, really first generation digital fire control system. It would do the same thing, but obviously because of the world we live in now, much more advanced. Instead of, say, tracking 2 different contacts out there in the world at one time, you could track 20, 25, or
Right.
they can probably track 200 now,
Yep.
you know, these days. But that was a new London, so I completed that in time to come out here and get stationed on the Guitarro,
Okay.
which was a wonderful place to be. I was telling somebody earlier, growing up in the Midwest in South Dakota, after spending a year here, this was the warmest winter that I ever experienced in the coldest summer, because the temperature never moved more than, you know, 5 or 7 degrees. And to this day, I love San Diego. It was, any place in the world I could live, it would be right here in Point Loma. But I've been able to come down quite a few times to visit. Matter of fact, I have a friend of mine. He's a retired. He's a civil engineer. I used to work with him, but he was in the Marines as a helicopter pilot. So he was a major when he retired.
Okay.
But because he retired, he's got his little card that you can do everything that you can't do if you're just a regular civilian. So he and I go sailing down in Coronado like 2, 3, 4 times a year. We've been doing that for 30 years, so it's been wonderful.
That's impressive.
It is lovely to be able to do that. So, having spent how long? So I was in for a total of 7 years, but quite a you know, I think it was about 3.5 or 4 years. I was stationed right here in San Diego on the Guitarro, and the Guitarro was the test boat for the Tomahawk cruise missile, and the fire control system was like the key system of the weapon system. It was the interface between all input ship sensors and the weapon, and it was all new, it was all digital. We would go out on Monday, shoot a weapon, come back Wednesday, load another weapon, go out to San Clemente, the island, shoot another weapon, come back, and, you know, do it all again next week. And there was some breaks in there because they'd have to go back and either come up with a new missile, or because they didn't always work. There was a few failures, right, as there always is on a new system. So they'd, you know, do some tests to figure out what went wrong and come up with a new software or something. But that was about a 3.5 year period, which I loved, being here, being stationed here, living right here in beautiful Point Loma. And during that time, we did a couple of Westpac. We did one in '79, did a couple of other extended operations up to Canada, Alaska, Oregon, Washington. Pulled it in San Francisco Bay a couple times. But the Westpacs were really fun because, you know, we went to Hawaii, and we went to Japan, and we went to the Philippines, and we went to Australia. We were supposed to go to New Zealand, but the Prime Minister of New Zealand said we don't want any nukes in our country, so we didn't get to go. When we went to Japan, as you were saying earlier about the nukes, I remember standing topside watch in Japan, and every day this little putt boat would come alongside, and these Japanese guys, and they would take their little sampling equipment out, and they would have to swipe the side of the boat and go back and see if there's any radiation, you know, being released. And then we kept going, though. Actually, we went all the way over to the Persian Gulf. Now, the Gulf itself wasn't an issue at that time, but in Yemen, and this is what surprises me, everything that was in the news then is in the news today. So we're sitting off Yemen, Aden, which is the town, the port, and we were waiting, the Russians had it at the time, we were waiting for this Russian sub to come out. We're supposed to trail him all the way back to, you know, either what's the town, Kamchatka is the peninsula with the sub base, Vladivostok is where he was supposed to go. But he never come out. So and this was kind of scheduled. They said, okay, he's not coming out. You guys go down to Kenya, Mombasa, spend some time. So we're headed down there. We're just like a day away. We're all excited because we're checking out what's the safaris we're going to go to and check out which elephants and giraffes. And we're just like less than a day away from pulling in. They said, oh, he's leaving. Okay. scrap that other stuff, go back up and catch him. Yeah, he left the port of Aden all right, but where did he go? Right off the coast of Somalia is this little island called Socotra. He just, and that's just like a few hundred miles. He just went from there to there. So then we came up and waited and waited and waited and waited until he finally left, and we trailed him all the way back to where he was going in Japan. But then I got out in 1983, and I went to school and became a civil engineer and got married and had 2 kids, and you know, life's moved on from there.
Right on. Important note, I actually met you when my dad had retired on the Guitarro.
Yeah,
And,
Ed Welch was a senior chief, right?
Correct.
ET. And I do remember his retirement ceremony was right over here.
Yep.
And that was, I think, in like August,
Maybe
July.
79, maybe 78.
Yeah, I can't remember
I'm
the
thinking
year.
79.
I was on the
79.
I was on the Guitarro from like say January 1st, 79 through like August of 83. So it was during that period. And then I just met him you know, an hour or so ago, which was kind of surprise.
Yeah.
Had a good little conversation and got his number, and then he went on to work for Convair. We actually got to take a tour. The folks that worked around the Tomahawk, it wasn't the entire boat's crew, but like torpedomen and sonarmen and
fire controlmen.
They said, hey, come over to have a tour. So the first and only time it's ever happened to me, they took us into the corporate lunchroom for lunch.
Okay.
Basically, it's a catered place with tables. We had to, you know, get all dressed up in our dress blues. And then they took us through the plant, and they showed us how they build these things and put them together. For me, fascinating was the welds, because it was some kind of aluminum, but they were using this computer that would, you know, weld the seams on the missiles,
Right.
which I thought was fascinating at the time. You know, robots now are standard, but at the time it was pretty new. And I guess he worked over there right after he retired. But Convair became General Dynamics, and now they've changed the way they do Tomahawks. But at the time, it was a pretty advanced missile system.
Oh yeah. And to this day, we still have them. And now they're being shot out of torpedo tubes, vertical launch. Our boomers have them too, and you guys were it. You guys were the main test platform.
That was the first boat to get the digital fire control system, and of course the corollary to that was the Tomahawk. There was 2 versions. One was called TLAM and TASM, Tomahawk Land Attack, Tomahawk Anti-Ship.
Yes.
Now, getting the coordinates of where you wanted to shoot this thing, which had a fairly long range, the anti-ship I think was like 400 miles, something like that, and the land attack, you know, go like 1,500 miles. So to go off San Clemente Island and shoot one of the first version that we tested in the digital application was the TASM anti-ship missile. You know, miss a few, catch a few. Finally, they perfected that. Then we went to the land attack, and I just was so fascinated to go off San Clemente Island, shoot a Tomahawk, and then, you know, we'd be on the radio listening, because this thing would fly over Point Mugu. It would fly up the river there towards Palmdale, and then it would fly over to Nellis Air Force Base, and it would hit a target that was like 5x5, which was absolutely, to me, amazing. But to do that required targeting and terrain analysis. So in those days, I think a lot of it was photographs, because I remember it was an issue. Okay, here's the photograph so that we can remember what the ground looks like by the photograph. We can look down by the camera and see, okay, we're crossing the bridge and going across the river. But if it snowed, we were screwed. Yeah. Because it wasn't smart enough to figure that out. I'm sure now they've got all those buds worked out. But everything was software, so they would bring down a new package. That was the targeting package. So it almost like the old ICBMs. It had to be pre-programmed
Correct.
as to what your target was.
Correct.
I'm sure now they can change it on the fly.
Yeah.
You know, they can.
And I'm going to state this as we're talking. Back then, this would have been secret information. Now it's not, because it's
widely
all over. It's
public and
yeah, it's
available.
public available. One thing to note, on your right sleeve, there's a submarine 637 with a DSRV attached to it. Now, quite possibly, that could have been the mothership, the Hawkbill, which I was on my first boat, the sister ship to the Guitarro, and my dad was on the DSRV.
You talking about over here somewhere?
Yep. So
you know, the funny
right
thing
there?
is, I had a
My
good
dad was
friend.
on DSRV?
He was on the DSRV. I had a good friend of mine. It was a machinist mate, actually, on the Guitarro. His name was John Morrison, and he and I and another guy, Gary Huffman, we had a place off base. We lived out in close to El Cajon, Navajo, Jackson,
Right.
somewhere right over there. But John Morrison stayed in the Navy. He was a Mustang, you know. He retired, I think, as a commander
Wow.
when he retired. But one of his jobs was to
Art
be in
was
charge
too.
of the DSRVs
Oh,
on the East Coast, because they have, I think,
Oh,
a
okay,
West
yeah,
Coast,
yeah,
East Coast
yeah.
version. So
that would have been the Avalon. The Mystic was out of here.
Out of here,
So
yeah.
that would have been the Avalon.
right.
DSRV 2, I believe. DSRV 1 was the or DSRV 2 Mystic.
You know what amazed me was one day, because one of these, that building right over there was our barracks. Right over here, this was kind of an open lot at that time. They had, the DSRV was there, the Trieste was there, the Alvin was there, something else was there. Why they were all there, and they sat there for like a couple of months.
I remember the Trieste, seeing that.
Yeah, and just to see all these versions of deep sea diving machines was just quite incredible. Why
Well,
they were here, I don't know.
I think they were going through probably some repairs, quite
Maybe.
possibly. And then they went over to Coronado.
Yeah, they are out of North Island because
North
they
Island,
would
yeah.
fly them.
Yeah.
If they had to, for some reason, take it over to the
Right.
Pacific or something, they would put it in a big C-130 and take it over there.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to talk about or say?
I don't know. I just love San Diego. You know, I was telling a friend who's a civilian who was down here for this picnic today, who didn't really know anything about why this is called Ballast Point, because the Spanish landed here and they would throw ballast in and out of the bottom of their ships, and
Which were rocks.
were rocks, exactly. But then this building right here was being built when I was down here. Before it was even built, they probably had already designed, but the San Diego Archaeological Society was doing investigation right over there.
Oh, wow.
Right
Really?
Basically right there, that little seawall right that corner.
Right.
And what they had found was the original fortifications that the Spanish had, where they had their little cannons pointed out
Really?
to the sea.
Wow.
And you can see the little stones and everything, and it was quite fascinating to see that. So there's a lot of history here. The military's got a big presence. The base itself has changed. I was only here one time since I left in 1983. I stayed with my friend that we do diving with here one time, like 20 years ago. But the tender's gone, and I guess there's only like 4 or 5 boats now, but it's still important. The military's a big presence in San Diego for sure.
This is.
Kind of almost a hidden presence, it seems, in that everything else, San Diego, Comic-Con, and everything else is kind of
Overshadowed.
SeaWorld gets more of the buzz, but the military is what keeps it here and keeps it thriving.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that's all I can think of.
I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart of interviewing you, being here, sharing this information, and also seeing my dad and you talking with my dad. It warms my heart and it helps him. It also, it feels good for him Really, really does. And
Yeah, he gave
so
me
I thank you very much
his number, and I want to try to get a hold of him later.
Yeah.
And of course, I think digital technology now allows more connectivity
Correct.
than it ever did before. You know, in the past, you would meet folks, become good friends, but then go your separate ways. Now there's the ability to somehow reconnect, and I've done that with a few of my old Navy buddies. Not too many, but it's, I think, more common now.
Yeah. That's how I connected with some of my guys, which I hadn't seen or heard of, decades. And now we're still talking, like Doc, for one, guy we both served on the Hawkbill together. I saw him last year, and now here we are again, and now I can go, hey Doc, see this? And we're on YouTube now, and we're going to be on Facebook. Same with you. You're going to be on YouTube. You're going to be on Facebook. So anytime you want to see something, here you go.
I told your dad earlier, he didn't exactly remember. He kind of did, but a guy named Ron Stolaronic, I hadn't seen him in 43 years. He's flying out like in a week or two to stay a couple days, because he's then flying over to the Philippines to do a diving trip. He's gotten into diving.
Wow.
So it's kind of a small world in many regards.
It is, and that's what's incredible. The submarine community is one of the smallest, tightest groups besides the SEALs. We are elites, and what's so amazing being a submarine community is because we're so small. It can also we can also interact with one another like time has not gone by.
Yeah, there's
and that camaraderie.
experiences that have been had that are equally shared, and this is not even dependent on time. You listen to somebody that was in the service in the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah, the technology was different, but the experience was the same as someone who's been in the service today.
So like you said, submarine community or submariners experience their life 95% boredom and 5% adrenaline, and you're absolutely right. Even though sometimes I tell people they want to ask about certain situations, and I say I can't talk about it or whatever, but I do say this: I can look at you, Jay, and I know where you've been, I know what you did, and you can look at me and do the same thing. We don't have to say one word. We can just look at our fish. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, and we know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's always interesting to learn about others' experiences, because you can talk about it with each other.
Yes.
And know what you're talking about, but then you always want to know, where were you and what boat were you on and what did you do and where did you go and what kind of crazy situations did you get into, either out at sea or on the beach, whatever.
Of course. So I want to say thank you again, Jay, for this, and thank you again for coming and being here, and I'm hopefully see you again next year or maybe sooner.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.